Blue lights and sirens, yeah, it's time to go. No time to defund us. You should know that we're not perfect. We're human, we're flawed. Just save us some grace for the sake of us all. We're holding that thin blue line, 'cause that's what we do. We don't do it for the glory, we do it for you.
Hello, Vax Choice and Clouthub community. Thank you so much for joining us today for In the Lion's Den, hosted by Dr. Bill Lionberger. How are you doing today, Dr. Bill?
We're doing good. We're doing good. Boy, every day in the news, it's another exciting day of progress. So I'm excited to have some of the conversation we're going to have today and follow on to our last week's show. So
yeah, we are recording this on Wednesday and it is airing on Thursday, the 30th. But I've been watching the Kennedy confirmation hearing when I can today. I don't know if they're just having all the pharmaceuticals start or if it's going to look this way the whole time, but it's not encouraging. I'm hoping that they confirm him and that when this airs, everybody will have a better idea. But
well, I think that, you know, as they continue to ask the questions that they thought were going to be hard, the reality is that the information that he comes forward with is damning. So the more they ask, the worse it is for them. And,
I wish they'd let him talk about the lawsuits he's won against these people. Like Elizabeth Warren was like, you will promise that you will not make any money from lawsuits during this role or after. And he's like, no.
No. Yeah, you know, it's quite amazing to watch somebody with his skill and experience really handle these people that are nothing but partisan, you know what. So
absolutely. And today on the show, we have a new guest that we haven't had on before. We've got Lieutenant Stephen Rogers. You heard that correctly, Stephen Rogers. He has served with distinction in the U.S. Air Force from 1970 to 1974 and U.S. Navy Reserves from 1986 to 2010, retiring as a lieutenant commander. During his Navy career, he held key intelligence roles, including Deputy Director of the Intelligence Support Group for Homeland Security and Senior Military Intelligence Officer to the FBI National Joint Terrorism Task Force. He also served as Deputy Chief of Staff Intelligence and contributed to national security initiatives post 9/11. Beyond his military service, Lieutenant Rogers retired as a detective lieutenant from the Nutley, New Jersey Police Department in 2011 and was elected to the public office where he established New Jersey's first municipal military and Veterans Affairs Bureau. He holds a degree in criminal justice from William Patterson University and completed advanced studies in the military strategy and global terrorism. We also have returning guests, Mary Fanning and Christie Hutcherson. All of the links to our guests will be available in the description below the video, so please make sure to follow them and check them out. All right, well, I will be in the background enjoying the show, Dr. Bill, and can come back at the end for questions. I will see you then.
Excellent. So welcome to In the Lion's Den today. This is a follow-on Iron Fist Diplomacy and Trump's Global Chessboard Part 2. In today's show, where we are continuing our discussion regarding the shifting tectonics of global power dynamics and the stakes of Americans' future on the world stage. With the legacy of President Trump's foreign policy still echoing, it's more important than ever that the U.S. must reclaim our global leadership and reassert its dominance around the world with peace through strength, which is threatened by our adversaries who have been emboldened by years of weakness and indecision. It is also important to highlight the aggressive expansion of China to Russia's growing belligerence against the U.S. In the current global context, it is necessary for our military to undergo a major realignment, recognizing that our military dominance has been gutted by the woke ideologies that prioritize social experiments over battlefield readiness. At this time, we find our forces are less prepared, less cohesive, and less capable of facing our global threats. We need to build back and focus on its core mission to defend and protect our U.S. interests before all others. Under the Biden administration, we witnessed a serious degradation of U.S. military power and readiness, compounded by those policies that prioritized ideologies over our readiness. It's time to tear down the dangerous policies that have weakened and threatened the U.S., or we risk losing our place at the top of the global food chain, and with it, the stability of the world. And with that, I'd like to bring on our special guest today, retired Lieutenant Commander Stephen Rogers, Christie Hutcherson, a geopolitical security expert and returning a co-host, and Mary Fanning, a national security journalist and frequent expert on the show. Welcome to all of you on In the Lines Day.
Pleasure to be here.
Nice to be with you, Dr. Bill.
Well, I'm excited today to continue to kick this can and talk about the shift in the polarity and the shift with this new administration and the pace with which it's happening. I want to further vet out what's going on in the military, because there's all kinds of things I'm sure going on behind the scenes. And I would probably start with Lieutenant Rogers, and your thoughts about what's going on behind the scenes with the military and those generals that need to go, and probably what's happening at the Pentagon these days.
Well, what was going on behind the scenes was the advancement of a woke agenda ideology that certainly took our troops, our warriors, off of the battlefields and into the classroom. They had our young men and women more concerned about pronouns, more concerned about how do you address another officer. I mean, it was a train wreck. It did affect the morale, it did affect the welfare, and more important, it certainly affected our national security. So now what's happening, because of the new administration, I'm very happy to see that President Trump swiftly acted. I mean, he didn't waste any time in making sure that all of this crazy ideology is going to disappear, and has been disappearing not only in all our services, but very importantly at our military academies. So all this is happening now, and it's going to bring us back to where we belong. You see the picture behind me, President Ronald Reagan. He was very, very clear on peace through strength. You mentioned it, Dr. Bill, and I'm happy to see that President Trump is picking up on that theme and making sure that we will become the global power for people to deal with in the future.
So, Christie, as a securities expert and working in the arena, actually boots on the ground, contracts, all that kind of thing, what is shifting behind the scenes, and what, we've got all of this mess of contracts and wars, Ukraine, Russia. What do you see evolving out there in terms of where we need to go now?
Well, Lieutenant Rogers, right. First and foremost, they're attacking what has prevented what I believe is true military readiness, and that is the ideology of this woke DEI. It actually weakens our military. It does not strengthen us. We need to make sure that the men and women who are in the positions, especially those on the front line, have the capabilities to activate and to be able to fully put America's defense first, right? And so I believe that they're cleaning house in the right way. As far as contracts and things like that are concerned, it's really interesting because contracts are on a cycle, and that's going to take a little bit more time to figure out contracts that have already been awarded that maybe need to be pulled back. What companies have those contracts, it's a little bit more complicated and legal. So that's going to take Trump's team a little bit longer. But at the end of the day, one of the first steps is, and I loved what Pete said the other day, our new Secretary of Defense. We have got to combat China. China is the number one threat facing not just the United States of America, but actually on a global scale, the world. They have, while we've been weak, they've been advancing. And by the way, through, I believe, the help of the Biden administration, through a lot of things that we can go into later. But we have to get our naval readiness back up to par. We need to put back in the numbers and the properly trained men and women in uniform to do their task and be trained in the proper ways. And we need to also combat the AI. We look at threats against the United States aren't just kinetic. We have our grid systems, right? So Biden allowed China
to come back in and put over 460 something transformers on our power grids. So the warfare and our military might is going to look, I think, a little bit deeper and bigger and from a 30,000 foot view, because we're being attacked in a lot of different areas where I believe prior to Trump's first term in office, he didn't face some of the things now that we're going to be facing. And our military is the number one thing that we need to focus on. And then we also need to look at how the rest of the law enforcement agencies can work together to be those eyes, ears, and boots on the ground, because Lieutenant Rogers and I were talking earlier today about the terrorists who are actually in this country, who are plotting and planning a big multiple threats against the United States as well. So again, we have multiple fronts. We have a lot of things that we have to do. It's going to take a little bit of time, but we have the right leadership, I believe, in place.
Hey, Dr. Bill, could I follow up on what Christie just offered?
Sure.
National security, right? There's another front, and it's not talked about very much, and that's our educational system. And Christie's right. The Chinese Communist Party have a lot of patience. They got a lot of time, and they've got a lot of strategic planning and tactics that they're using that we may be unaware of, meaning the American people. So national security in the short term, yes, we have to do everything that Christie just shared with you, but in the long term, we got to overhaul our educational system. We got to get our young people involved in what America is all about, the greatness of this country. Why be proud of America? The advancements we made as the American people. And that is long-term and affects recruitment into the United States military. Because right now it's at a dismal state of affairs regarding getting young people in the military. We have to return to that. So there's several fronts, and I just want to add the educational front is a very important factor in the future of this country's security.
So Mary, you are so good at seeing the big picture. Here we are, this new administration. There's so much work to be done. We're seeing boots hit the ground running. What do you think are the criticals that we're working on, that we need to be working on, and also where we need to pick up the pace, especially in the military? And like he's talking about educational indoctrination, which I would call it, because they play the long game very well and we don't. So your thoughts?
Well, I agree with you that we're seeing a tectonic shift, and also with Lieutenant Commander Rogers, what they've done to our education, particularly in our military academies with DEI Marxism. We have never seen anything like this before. This is truly the actions of the enemy within. And I'll take it back to Joe Biden. From the very beginning, Joe Biden was put in place by the Council for a Livable World, the Soviet Silvermaster spy operation. And that's who Joe Biden was connected to. That's foundational to who Joe Biden is. But when have we ever seen a president whose family was doing these backroom deals with their son going and making it has not yet been exposed, everything that Hunter was doing. There's much more on that laptop, much more to do with BHR and China. But this goes back to China and the plan that they put forth on how they were going to take us down. Christie's right in speaking to the grid. And China and their plan, General Chi Houtian talked about taking this country down, that they needed to kill 200 million of us. When someone tells you they want to kill you, believe them. And everything that China has done is to take down the United States, and the Biden family was helping them. Right now, we're also looking at the politics of the situation, where we're watching what took place, this filthy system on how they played Pete Hegseth. Now it's come out that Tom Tillis was behind bringing his ex-sister-in-law forward. If we are to survive as a country and make America great again, then I suggest that those who are undermining President Trump get over what they're doing, because we are going forward without them. And there will be repercussions that come for these people. There will be consequences, because they ran a coup using falsified information for 4 years against President Trump and for his 4 years in his previous administration. So one of the things that are so important is that there are consequences for what they have done, because this can never happen again.
And Lieutenant Rogers, isn't it right that there's a much bigger plan in place of being worked from China as it relates to taking over its neighbor? Can you speak to that a bit?
Well, it's been a plan that's been in effect from China for many, many years. This isn't new. The Chinese Communist Party has been working very, very hard to expand themselves. The issue that we're dealing with now is the balance of power. Interesting enough, the United States of America needs to find a way to separate any type of alliance between China and Russia. Putin, look, he's concerned about the Chinese. Don't make any mistake about it. They're on his border. He knows how they operate. And the last thing on earth he needs is a Chinese intervention into Russia. At the same time, the last thing on earth we need is for China and Russia to come together and plot against us. So there's a balance that we have to recognize and deal with it as soon as we can, but we have to deal with it strategically. My guess is down the road, you're going to see Putin and President Trump come together. They're going to deal with that situation in Ukraine, put that to an end, and hopefully they're going to come together, maybe once again as at least semi-allies, if not full allies, because both of us, the United States of America and Russia, we have a problem. And it isn't climate change like these left-wing liberal socialist communists are trying to feed the American people. It's China.
Right. So when we look at that stage, and is maybe the first strike of that will be trying to deal with the Russia Ukraine and get some traction there. That may be a building block to what you're talking about.
It may be, except Taiwan. We got to keep our eyes on the South China Sea. We got to keep our eyes on Taiwan. The Chinese Communist Party, I'll tell you, they're building, and I think Christie mentioned this, they're not sitting around just watching. They're building a very potent, powerful Navy. Well, we've been focused on DEI and the woke agenda. The Chinese Communist Party has been building, I'll tell you, a very, very, very powerful Navy. They know that they're going to be able to use their land craft, which doesn't hold a dozen troops. We're talking 200 troops, 300 troops. Picture about 4 or 5 dozen of those pieces of landing craft going into Taiwan. So we have to keep our eyes on China with regard to timing. But yeah, it may be a building block with Russia moving forward, but I just hope we don't run out of time.
It would also appear that we're in a more dangerous time because we need to build back our Navy, right? I mean, they've got us beat on ships. That might speak to readiness because they haven't had a leader who've been running us in the ground like ours was. So this might be one of the most dangerous times because we have to build from here, and they know exactly where we're at. Don't we have a lot of work to do to catch up?
Well, we do. Look, when Ronald Reagan was in office, he committed to a 600 Navy fleet. Why? We are a nation that has to be prepared to fight 2 ocean wars, the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. Well, of course, as time went on and the Democrats took control, and as recent as Joe Biden, shipbuilding has come to a virtual halt. There's a lot of issues regarding, you spoke of contracts and contractors earlier. We need to rebuild the Navy we have. I mean, we've all read about spare parts. Can't get spare parts for naval aircraft, can't get spare parts for ships. And more importantly, look, we could build all the ships we want, but if we don't have the manpower, the skill sets to man those ships, and that's why I brought education up earlier, we're going to be in real trouble. So yes, Dr. Bill, we have a lot to do. It's not impossible. It is very possible. We're Americans. Look what we did during World War II when we came together. We didn't have the manufacturing plants. We didn't have the skills. Boy, did we come together and beat the living daylights out of Nazi Germany and Japan. Well, that should serve as a warning to our enemies today. We can do it, but we need a leader that's going to lead the charge, and we have that leader in the White House now. But remember this, we only got him there for 4 years. We got midterms coming up, so the fight this is not the end of the fight. This is the beginning.
Absolutely.
A question for you, Christie. We have used up, to my view, a lot of our U.S. munitions, sending them to Israel, sending them to other places in the world, most especially Ukraine. And I'm not sure where that leaves us in our own munitions void. What kind of a void has that created, and what does it take to catch up? I saw the other day that we had immediately increased our strategic oil reserves, after Trump took over and made some changes. But I don't know that the munition side catches up as fast. I don't know. Your thoughts?
Well, we are at the weakest point I believe we've been in a long time, and that's saying a lot because in 2018-19, my previous contracting company that I worked with, We were tasked under the Trump administration back then to look at, and I can't get into the details because it's classified, some of it. So we were tasked with looking at the capabilities and our readiness for wars on several fronts. And at that time, I can tell you just briefly, we were not prepared. We had just come out of the Obama years, and between Obama and Biden, they have weakened us at levels that I cannot tell you. We still are strong because we have incredible military industrial complex. We still have a lot of technology, but under we've left a vacuum. So Biden, and I say this, we left an American leadership vacuum, right? Putting America first. We had somebody who was pro-globalism and pro-China. And quite frankly, like Mary said, I believe when history clears, there's going to be a lot of things that come out, and we're going to have a lot of individuals at the highest levels who actually committed treason, I believe, professionally against this country. That being said, we have to ramp up at levels that we've never seen, to go back to not just China, but Russia, like Lieutenant Rogers suggested. If you look at strategically what China has been doing, and Bill, I know I've been on your show and I've talked about this. Think about the globe as a chess piece, right? And China has been infiltrating and putting their footprint in very strategic locations. And when they couldn't put their footprint in there, they've been building it. And from whether it's Central South America, Argentina, from spy bases to strategic ports and locations all around the globe through their Belt and Road Initiative and buying favor, we are so far behind the curve. And then when you look at locations like particularly Africa, so Africa, Russia, for example, there's a lot of minerals that we need to make a lot of things. Africa is very strategic. Well, when Putin assassinated the head of the Wagner organization, which is a military militia kind of arm, very strong organization. Well, they had to rebrand themselves. Well, they branded themselves as a humanitarian organization called AFRICOR. And we don't have time to probably get into all of that, but they have been in Africa in strategic places like Chad and Sudan and different places getting gold and natural minerals. And why does this matter? China has been doing the same thing in places like Brazil and Peru and Venezuela and all of these other natural resource countries. We need these resources, and we don't have what we call processing, right? We can't process this. We have it here. We have these resources ourselves, whether it's lithium, etc. We don't have the processing capabilities because we haven't built them because of regulations. So there's so many things which all the way go back to military readiness, believe it or not. So we have a lot of things on the table that we've got to take a look at from a national security perspective, that we are so vulnerable that we have allowed decade after decade to go unchecked or not looked at. So, China, again, is probably the number one threat, I believe, to the world on a global stage. And we have to look at how we can deal with China. And lastly, before I turn it over, everybody who's been downloading DeepSeek, I'm gonna warn you, DeepSeek, and whether it's TikTok or DeepSeek or anything coming out of China, is owned. They have patents and they have contracts with every private company. They own, and they can, with the flip of a switch, turn on and extract your data, listen to you, and get your information. So it's very dangerous from a national security perspective. We should not allow this. They should not be allowed to have any company that is affiliated with China to operate any kind of AI special software into the United States of America.
It also comes back to the language of the other program that they basically, are trying to shut down. You need to make that broader so that it covers these, because all they do is change the name and you're back to where you were before. One of my questions to the lieutenant circles around readiness, because I think that the country is under this misnomer that all of our planes are ready, all of our guys are ready to rock and roll, all of our boats are ready, and everybody's ready. But the reality is different, isn't it?
Well, we're as ready as we can be. A perfect example, we were ready with Yemen when they were launching missiles into Israel. We knocked every single missile out. We certainly have a lot of mechanisms, as Christie said. Some of this, I'm sure, is classified, but I'm not worried about being not ready. We can be more ready, okay? And I'll tell you where we can be more ready and where we are really have a shortfall is the collection of intelligence and information. This administration has pretty much gutted our human resources in perhaps every country on the face of the earth. This electronic surveillance mechanisms, they've done a lot of damage there, but the manpower has been decreased, but not to a point where I would be too fearful on not being ready enough to counteract some sort of an attack on our country. But we have been spread pretty thin, and we need to do a lot more to make sure that anybody who decides to attack us, we're ready to deal with them. And all eyes are on China. I mean, I don't anticipate them attacking us in the near future. But Taiwan may be that trigger, and we'll have to see what happens. But no American should fear. We've got some great, bright, combat-ready men and women in the service, ready to do what they must do in the event that we are directly threatened by a foreign enemy.
You know, to piggyback off of what Lieutenant Rogers just said really quick, you know, we need to look at how we're paying these young men and women in uniform. You know, I can tell you they barely make enough money to get by, and China is using that again as a vulnerability. We're seeing an unprecedented amount of some soldiers who are selling sensitive secrets to China for money. And so we have to look at how we recruit, how we vet, and make sure that those who have access to certain sensitive documents and certain clearances, that it's not just a one-stop, that we're constantly monitoring to make sure that China doesn't get a hold of any of our most sensitive technologies and et cetera. For example, you know, one of the most disheartening thing, and Lieutenant Rogers and I talked about this, and he understands what the protocol is. America needs to understand what Biden did in Afghanistan went against every single protocol legally that was supposed to happen, and how you handle left behind anything. And I believe it wasn't by accident. I believe when history again clears itself, it was purposeful. So now our enemies, including Iran, has been able, and ISIS have been able, and China have been able to get a hold of some of the most latest technology to reverse engineer it. And more importantly, some of those SKU numbers and just a lot of things that were left behind in Afghanistan. It wasn't a debacle. It was purposeful, I believe.
No, that wasn't a debacle at all. He left 13 Americans dead on the ground, but just as importantly, he left the lithium behind so that we could no longer make our own chips. He handed Bagram to the Chinese, so that was very important to us protecting Taiwan. Those chips are not just for kids and computers. It's for military use. The fact that they have handed over our means of production to China, that we don't produce enough of our own steel, we don't produce our own chips, and then they're going to give them Bagram so that they can take Taiwan where we get our chips. There's no question that everything that Joe Biden did was against this country. And if you go back to Joe Biden when he came on the scene, but if you go back, I did a story recently on General POW, Admiral, Senator Jeremy Denton. So he was 7 years a POW. And Admiral Denton said that the most dangerous man in the U.S. Senate who would come to destroy the United States would be Joseph Biden, and that he should never achieve power. People should have known that. But when you look at unrestricted warfare and the plan that they have to take down the United States, it's imperative that people read about unrestricted warfare. China tells you what they're going to do, and they're in the midst of doing it, and they're taking over our grid. Christie, the idea that Joe Biden let them back in to put the back doors into our grid, to take our grid down, can you make anything more simple than taking down the country with an EMP and taking out the grid, and China having access to all of this?
And there is another battlefield that needs to be discussed. And you know what that is? Right in our neighborhoods, right in our city streets, our law enforcement officers, our police departments, all affected by the Biden administration. And look, it shouldn't go past the American people that the Chinese Communist Party got their ugly head raised in a lot of our cities. We have had, and it is factual, Chinese police stations in this country, manned by not Chinese diplomats, not Chinese statesmen, but Chinese Communist Party members. And the fact of the matter is that our national security, yes, has more than, I guess, anything else to do with our military, but we have a battle going on here in America, and we have to equip our law enforcement officers with the tools they need to get the job done, like they did in the past. And to Christie's point, and it was an important point regarding qualifications and standards, the military went so far as what our police departments did, lower standards to get in, lower mental health standards, lower physical standards. In fact, you don't need a college education anymore to get in some of these police departments. You don't even need a high school diploma. Just show us a GED, and if you don't have that, we'll still send you to the police academy. And as a result, well, look what we have going on in America today. Our military has gone to the point where they've lowered their standards and found out that those that they recruited without reaching a high level of standards are now being discharged. So there is a big job that has to be done, again, with regard to leadership in the military. And you mentioned it before. I'm glad that President Trump is wiping out clean. I mean, I said a long time ago, he should have fired the entire Joint Chiefs of Staff. They're responsible for what's happening in our military. But no one was held accountable, but now they are. So we got a lot of work to do, but we'll get there. We'll get there. I'm confident we will.
When have we ever had a general, as Milley did, that called their counterpart in China and said, I'll call you first if President Trump looks like he's going to attack? When have we ever seen anything like that? One of the things that President Trump has done is taking away these security clearances for these intel professionals and General Milley, et cetera. These people should be brought up on charges of treason and sedition. This is not just a one-off and then they get to walk away after what they've done. Let's see what monies they've collected for what they've done as well. I was pleased to see that they took General Milley's portrait out of the Pentagon. I hope they burned it. This man has no business having any stars on his shoulders at all. The man was a traitor.
Yeah, I saw that, exact thing, Mary, and they said they were going to take another portrait. They said they would take probably, they potentially would take one of his stars. I'm thinking, why would he get to keep
Any.
more stars or any stars if while you're taking one is a pretty serious problem? Plus, they've taken his security, right? I mean, they took that away. That's what I read.
And
so
Brennan's and the spies who lied, that came out and said that there was nothing to Hunter's laptop when there was everything. The fact that Hunter Biden's email system was going through the encrypted system at the Pentagon for him to do these deals, where you have to keep in mind, he who owns the light bulb implements communism. When you're taking down our energy and Hunter Biden is facilitating energy deals between Russia and China, while Joe Biden is turning off the spigots in this country and handing over our petroleum reserve, it's fairly clear that they're not working on behalf of this country.
Yeah, we need to look at also, and I understand right now Trump needs to pass a couple things, but he needs to look at Schiff and others in both sides of the aisle, both Republican and Democrat, and anybody who has been pushing back or looking at their dealings, their security clearances as well, or they should not be allowed to sit on certain sensitive committees.
it seemed to me that the media kind of went through a phase of complete and utter being stunned when this election finally got over, and that's taken a little while for it to shake off. And you're seeing it in these legacy news where people are getting put to the evening, and now they're quitting, and their ratings are in the toilet. I mean, they're just the worst they've ever been. But now I'm also seeing a shift in the media where they're now deciding to put their feet back in the ground and try to figure out how they can continue to go after and against all of these executive orders and ways that they can try to blunt what Trump is trying to do, right?
The Smith-Munt media.
I'm sorry.
I beg your pardon. The Smith-Munt media,
Yeah.
Making psyops legal on the American people.
Exactly. Your thoughts, Christie?
Well, their tactics, I don't believe, are going to work for the masses. The sheep have been woken, and we are now lions, and it's going to be very difficult. And I think that's what hit them the hardest. It was a sucker punch straight to the gut, and not just in the United States, by the way. I believe on a global stage, you're seeing a lot of movement to push back against this globalist agenda. It's not good for everyday individuals, their lives, their communities, and they're seeing this, and they're seeing how it's impacted their family and their just being able to put bread on the table, simply as simple as that, or put heat in their homes. So, I think the Trump effect will have a major ripple effect across the world in a positive manner. And of course, they're going to kick and scream as much as they can do. They're going to hit and throw darts. It's going to be the same old playbook because they don't know any different. They've been all to the same school, right? They're underneath the same type of tutelage. That's the rules for radicals. Joseph Goebbels, these are their actual idols. They don't say it and they project it on us, but really in reality, this is where and how they operate. That's what communism is. That's what globalism is. And so they have nothing else. So that's what they're going to try to do. It won't work this time around.
Exactly.
Yeah, and learning those 15 Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals gives great insight into what these people do and what their playbook looks like.
To me,
I don't know why they haven't gotten rid of Hillary Clinton yet.
hopefully her day is coming, because I think they continue to unravel those parts and pieces. I'm just looking at that come out. But, to me, all of this speaks to readiness. We talked on the show before about all the different things that have come into this country, whether it's containers with whatever is supposed to be in there and issues that could be there, whether it's the, what is it, over 30,000 Chinese nationals, or, people from all over the world that want to do us harm. The reality is that we've got this thing up and running now, but I think that preparedness and readiness has still got to be on people's minds, because I believe that they have plans to try to stop this one way or the other, slow it down. And there are lots of different ways, right, General?
Well, thanks for the promotion. I'd rather be admiral because I was in the Navy, but that's okay. Well, look at readiness. All right, when we talk about readiness, we think of military. Are the American people ready to do what it takes? All right, all politics is local. And I try to get the point across. You know what? We've made changes in Congress. We've made changes at the White House. But you got to make changes on your school boards. You got to make changes in your local city governments, your mayors, your state governments. So people have to understand that it doesn't stop at the White House. It doesn't stop in Congress. It doesn't stop ever. But we have to understand that readiness is something that we all need to get involved in. And like I said, all politics is local. I urge people, run for office, go to your school board meetings. You can't be too busy to be concerned or not to be concerned about your national security. So national security is now everybody's business. And situational awareness, that's pounded into our brains in the military and in police work. Situational awareness. Look around, see what's going on. And if you see something, say something, but more so, do something. Don't say, well, the neighbor's going to do it, because the neighbor is saying, well, you're going to do it. So we must get involved, all of us together, one America under one God, with liberty and justice for all, period.
Yeah, I agree. Everyone took this big sigh of relief because they were so ecstatic that finally we had Trump back in office and we can start righting the ship. But that ship isn't going to be righted without the American people. We're not done. Actually, the work is just beginning. It's not over with. Trump, in reality, we need to think in a 2-year cycle. We don't know what's going to happen in 2 years, right? So we have a 2-year period of time to get this ship upright. And Trump can't do it alone. He needs the American people to fight like heck and be in the fight daily. I know we've got political exhaustion, but we've got to fight for this nation and for the country, because if we don't fight for her, she's going down, and she's going to go down in flames. And, when we talk about readiness, whether it's battlefield ready, civilian ready, all of us have a part to play. One of my biggest concerns, Bill, and you brought this up, I'm somebody who's actually physically been over 100+ missions on our southern border. I've been on our northern border. I've been in Central South America, you name it. And I've been sounding the alarm since literally 2 weeks into the Biden administration on what's coming over. We've uncovered sophisticated tunnel systems, which I believe firmly, at looking at these with fortified wall ceilings and all of the things that we've uncovered, there's no way that the cartels had that technology. They had to be working with somebody. Well, that somebody is Iran's Revolutionary Guard, ISIS, Hezbollah, Venezuela, and other factions and proxies of our enemies. And what have they smuggled into this country? That is a huge concern. Then you look at the military age men, not just the military age men. I'm going to be very specific with 3 targeted groups. One is China. These are military men, Chinese military men and spies who have infiltrated. And by the way, even the women who have been put over this border, they are spies. They are here for a reason, and they're embedded in different districts throughout the United States for a reason. Russian, we have come across Russian. And by the way, we have actually come across soldiers and those who are terrorists from countries that don't like America in the Middle East. And when you look at, then you couple this with, from a strategic perspective, and I know I'd love to hear, Lieutenant Rogers' take on this as well. When you look at what China has done in the background, right, to literally set the stage, right, for training grounds or locations which they can work out of. Look at the agricultural land that has been bought up. Where are they strategically located? You look at the spy balloon that literally was allowed, and I believe there was more than one, to actually take photographs. Then you look at all of the DJI drones that have gone up, which, by the way, sends data and information back to China. So they've got a really good picture of our grid systems, our road systems, our military bases. And now you bring in the military men and the spies. Now, I believe probably there needs to be some raids legally done on some of these properties and businesses that China's been allowed to operate. And it'd be interesting to see what we come up with and what we find. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. We will be attacked on our soil. And I believe it'll be soft targets, multiple. And we need to be ready. And it goes back to what Lieutenant Rogers says. You have an internal system called your gut, right? But that is your alarm system that goes off. I would rather have you be wrong and stop something, or not, it might not happen, but what if you're right? We need to be vigilant. Now is the time to literally be vigilant and do your part as an American citizen to protect and defend, and let Trump's administration do what they need to do.
Police stations were mentioned earlier, Chinese police stations. You have to wonder, how many Chinese do you need before you need a police station to police your people in another country? I mean, what's another reason why they would be here? They were probably here to police their own people so that they are following whatever, mandate and other, maybe as a command center, really, for those people. But we definitely got to figure those out, take them down, and have them right in the heart of a major big city. But I thought I wanted to have Mary kind of weigh in on what we've been talking about before we go to Q&A, and just kind of get her global perspective.
Well, Christie mentioned China's Belt and Road Initiative and the ports that they've taken across the globe, and particularly those that used to be our allies. And one of my greatest concerns is Gulf Tainer, and Biden and Obama handed off Port Canaveral and the Port of Wilmington to Gulf Tainer and Dr. Jafar Jafar, who was Saddam Hussein's nuclear mastermind. Just before they gave him the contract for the cargo container operations at Port Canaveral, they went into a joint venture with the company that exports the Club K cargo container, which is a weapon system that launches nuclear, biological, chemical weapons. When you look at unrestricted warfare, when you look at this Belt and Road Initiative, when you look at other things that China has inserted themselves into, including, imagine this, we're finding biolabs in California. It's barely covered by the legacy media. Thank God they're dead at this point. But that's incredibly important, what we're finding across the country. If open borders, who's running this operation with Mexico? It's China. This is all China. This is all part of unrestricted warfare. And it's time for us to get ready. The idea that we have had our ports and that someone was able to bring in Club Ks into this country, they're working with Hutchison Whampoa and the Chinese. We've written about this and actually had bills passed, meeting with the congressman to get President Trump to sign this. But this is going to take the American people to be aware, as Lieutenant Commander Rogers says. We have all got to be very alert right now. This is the most dangerous point in our history to be attacked in the homeland. And China's here, and all their spies are here. They're in our biolabs. They were at Fort Detrick. This is a very dangerous period in our history. We must wake up and take out the woke agenda and take back the country, because it won't be here if we don't wake up real fast.
Great point, Mary. Melissa, you're back with us for Q&A.
Yes, I am. I guess this is a question kind of for all of you to kind of just touch on is we see that they're trying to remove TikTok, which I agree with you is just, Chinese spyware, but isn't it kind of like a straw man argument because our phones are made in China? They're made in these Asian countries and Taiwan and all these things. Like, shouldn't we just stop buying from China, stop getting our electronics from China? Or is that unrealistic because they're cheaper for people and they're, I don't want to say more advanced, but maybe in some ways they are. I don't really know that for sure. But is it realistic that we can get away from Chinese spyware unless we just totally cut them off and quit buying their technology?
You'd better.
Do you want to tackle that, Lieutenant Rogers, or?
Yeah. I offer this up to you. It's going to take quite a while. It can be done. It's going to take quite a while. If we decide immediately to put a stop to Chinese products coming in here, we're not going to be broadcasting. We're not going to be having these conversations. But it goes to the point that Christie made earlier, a very good point. The Chinese didn't take over overnight. This is years and years and years of planning. I'm talking about decades, going back to the 80s. I mean, they're not dumb people. They're smart. Communism, anybody who knows about communists, very patient people. So now we're in a situation where, to your point, is we need to do this. We need to stop buying from them, but they got us by the throat right now. But we're going to take their hands off our throats, I believe, sooner rather than later.
And one of the things that we need to, I believe, strategically look at is, how do you remove power? Well, power is through money. We need to look at what Trump said, the tariffs and things. It's a balancing act. We need to hold them accountable for the Wuhan leak with COVID and make them accountable. But we need to start first to get us non-dependent on China. America has to start manufacturing and building here in America. We have to produce our own goods. We have to bring back the pharmaceuticals out of China and into the United States. So Trump needs to bring a lot of, I believe, CEOs and corporations to the table. And we need to start incentivizing these companies to literally get out of China and bring all of their businesses back into the United States, or move it to a friendly allied country to operate out of. When we start shifting and doing that, then we will become less and less dependent on China. And it's easier for us to make that move. And China will go kicking and screaming, and it will escalate. But I believe when you take away the money, you dry up the head of the snake. And that goes with just about anything that we do. I do want to say something about the naval, which is very dangerous. If you look at what China's done with their naval warships, look at what they're doing and dragging and disrupting critical supply, oil supply and natural gas underneath the ocean waters. Look at how they're being able to disrupt grids, again, using their naval ships and this technology through subs and different things. So there's a lot on the table here, and there's a lot at play and a lot at stake. Trump has inherited quite the mess.
Yes, he has. And I think that something I would like a little bit of an explanation on, since I don't really trust search engine results and stuff, so maybe you're the people to ask, is Trump keeps saying that, we're taking back the Panama Canal because it's basically China's now. So how does that work? If anybody can explain that to me, and how is that just going to raise prices for China trying to come through the Panama Canal, or what is that going to do?
Well, I would suggest that President Trump will do everything he can diplomatically to ensure that we take control of the Panama Canal, because frankly, which many people didn't know, and I'm glad he exposed it, the Chinese are controlling that canal, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So it's a threat to our national security. And I'm not going to go so far as to say that there will be military force used. But before that happens, I believe the message will get across to the president of Panama, like the message got across to the president of Colombia a few days ago. And peace through strength is going to really speak very loud.
The Panama Canal strategically is one of the most important waterways from a supply chain to the United States of America. And if China completely takes over and doesn't allow our ships or our goods or our services to pass through there, it is going to cripple not just the United States, but it will cripple Canada and others. So it is strategic. And by the way, we didn't give the Panama Canal away. There's a treaty. And if they are in breach of that treaty, so we have every right legally to go in and seize back the Panama Canal. But I'm going to go further. Look at what China has done in Peru. So they have a very deep water port that just opened up in the last couple of months that can house military ships and submarines. We are scrambling, by the way, right now, behind the scenes for the last probably a couple years from the military, trying to figure out how and where we're going to be able to strategically stop or defend what's coming in Peru. And so then you look at what China has done. It's been halted for right now, but China has also looked at there. I don't remember the name of the lake right now, but up the belly of the Central America and South America, there's a big lake, and China wants to dig another Panama Canal through there. And they've been in negotiations. I believe it is with Nicaragua. And so they are strategically, they also have bases in Bermuda and Jamaica, deep water ports, China. And so we have got to strategically take back the Panama Canal just for the survival, I believe, of the United States of America.
Absolutely. So we built it. How many men died? We own the land. The idea that they think that it's just been handed over is ludicrous. I am so proud of President Trump taking back that which we built, which we own. And Jimmy Carter was a moron.
And hasn't it kind of been pretty much back to extortion, the amount of money that they're charging just our own ships? We built it, and the amount of money they charge us to use it is just tantamount to extortion, right?
Yeah, I agree. I couldn't agree with you more. Supply chains are, how do you topple a society? You squeeze them like a boa constrictor, and that's what China's doing.
Mm-hmm.
You have a final question, Melissa?
Yes. What can the civilian manufacturing world do to support military readiness?
Stop buying from China.
Well, I would offer this, that they could offer, again, getting back to education, get these vocational schools and these tech schools and these trade schools, start supporting them, fund them if you have to, because that's where the strength of America is. Look, I'm all for college, but I've got to tell you, what's going on in our colleges is not helping our country. But what can go on in these tech schools and trade schools, and where young men and women could learn the trades and get the skill sets that we could man the ships, we can man the aircraft, that's the best thing they can do, and probably one of the most effective things they can do right now to ensure that our national security is taken care of, and we'll be able to meet any challenge in the future.
And I would suggest as well to Linda McMahon, I would love to see, starting in 9th, 10th grade, all the way up into 11th and 12th, and you can stage this as they grow, but apprenticeships. Way back when how did you learn a trade? How did you learn how to do anything? Well, it was apprenticeships. You were taught by physically being there, and that skill, that knowledge was handed down and shown. And I think that our school systems need to get back to having some apprenticeships. And wouldn't it be beautiful at 11th and 12th grade, where you've dabbled in it in 9th and 10th grade, and then in 11th and 12th grade, you kind of are being shaped to where you want to go. But then you have these corporations or these military industrial complexes or whatever of the military. We already have that with some of the military programs in the high schools, but let's expand that program. And then, they have half days. Let them go the second half of the day. Instead of going home, go and be an apprentice and learn your trade physically at that business. How valuable would that be? So when you're 18 and you graduate from high school, you already have some skill sets, and that you can build further on that. It would make us a heck of a lot more stronger, I believe.
That's right.
And I'd add to that, Christie, they need to bring back the study of the U.S.
Absolutely.
Constitution into our grammar schools, that they have to pass that test and start teaching love of America instead of this woke version where these chip on their shoulder crowd have taught the youth to hate their own country.
Yeah, they ask science questions. Can men get pregnant now? And it's just, we've totally, and that's part of the Chinese cognitive warfare on the American people, like through things like TikTok, is to basically, while we're worried about gender studies, they're building their military and making their people smarter. So
I wanted to just do some final thoughts, maybe starting with Lieutenant Rogers. A couple of final thoughts for our listeners in terms of where we're at and where we're going.
As Americans, let us never, ever forget that we're accountable to God Almighty, that there is a Lord, his name is Jesus Christ. I know a lot of people probably don't want to hear that, but it is the truth. So if we put our faith to work, as the Bible says, we pray, God answers prayers, but he answers a lot of those prayers through us. So we put our faith to work, we work hard, we pray hard. And what's the old saying? Well, the family that prays together stays together. In this case, the nation that prays together stays together.
Excellent. Christie.
We have a covering. I believe that God Almighty has listened and heard our prayers and our cries. He has given us a second chance to do what's right. And he put a leader in. He might not be perfect. We need to keep him accountable, but we also need to get behind him. Our work is not done. We have a lot of enemies, and we have a lot that we need to continue to expose the darkness and put light in there. We have a lot of hope ahead of us, but again, we need to stay vigilant, and we need to understand who our enemy is, both foreign and internally. So we can, because if you don't know what the problem is, you don't know how to fix that problem. If you don't know who your enemy is, you don't know how to combat that enemy. So we need to understand who they are, what they are, and where our foundation is. And I believe America can have a very bright future ahead of her with the American people and the spirit of this great country.
That's right. Isn't the Bible verse, be wise as serpents and innocent as doves? That's what we're supposed to do. You can't be wise as a serpent if you don't know what the serpent's doing.
And Mary, can you help round out the show?
Yes. Put on the armor of God. Have confidence. We have a leader finally that's back to help us make America great again. This is one nation founded under God. Have confidence we are winning. Employ warfare where you're speaking and awakening your neighbors as to what's taking place. Cognitive warfare. So talk to your neighbors, work together, stand shoulder to shoulder, and have confidence we are winning. We have taken America back, and we will rise again.
Excellent show, guys. Excellent show. Thank you to everybody. Mary, Christie, Lieutenant Rogers, thanks for everybody to be on the show today and your great words of wisdom, and look forward to future shows as we continue on. Thank you very much.
No, thank you. My pleasure.
God bless.
Lacing up those boots, strapping on that vest, spin that radio on, pin a star in the chest. Just doing what we love and doing what we do. We kiss our family goodbye before we go. Crazy world out there, only the good Lord knows. If we take that last call, the cavalry will be there to hold that line. Where we fall, we're holding that thin blue line, 'cause that's what we do. We don't do it for the glory, we do it for you. No matter the price, we'll sacrifice, we will. We'll hold that line. We'll hold that line. Yeah. Love us or hate us, we'll always be there. No matter the call, anytime and where. Just do what we love, yeah, do what we do. Blue lights and sirens, yeah, it's time to go. No time to defund us. You should know that we're not perfect. We're human, we're flawed. Just save us some grace for the sake of us all. We're holding that thin blue line, 'cause that's what we do. for you.